Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to the first meditation from Water for 2025. I'm Mary Hunt, the co-director with Diane New, and with me are my colleagues, Wed and Magdalena. Good wave to the camera, maybe. They are happily doing the IT for us tonight. It's wonderful to have young people doing these things that those of us who are a little bit older would only pretend to do. So I'm delighted that they're with us. I'm also delighted that you're with us because this is a rather special time in the history of the United States, at least. And for those of you who are from out of the country, I beg your indulgence, but it is uh, with a heavy heart that I wish you a happy new year and all good wishes as we cope together with the challenges of the new administration. These, I have discovered, are times that try good people's souls. And I thank heaven that we have respites like this to gather our strength, because we really need to gather our strength and pull ourselves together. Um, Magdalena and Wed and I were all at the People's March the Sunday before the inauguration, and we also had the opportunity last week to go to visit a member of Congress who's a personal friend of mine, and Paul Tonko, and for them to get a sense as Germans for how the U.S. functions. How do we operate? What's it like down there in the Capitol? And Paul has a beautiful office overlooking the Capitol itself, and so we had a good look at how it works, especially when I explained to them that the U.S. is run by 20-year-olds who, like themselves, who have lots of space and opportunity to work. So it's a good part of our time together. Last month in this space, Kate Moody directed us to Inner Light. It was a lovely offering, and you can review it, use it on our website under Water Programs and then under Meditation, and you'll find that you can use it again for your meditation. I urge you to do so. I want to add a special welcome to people who are new tonight. If this is your first time with us, a hearty welcome to you, and please let us know if there's any way we can be of help to you as time goes on. Tonight we're looking at finding a cure for loneliness with our friend Brad Lutz. It's another welcome theme. So, as many people, even those in deeply supportive relationships and with families and communities galore, have this common human experience at times, and for some more than others, of loneliness. So, Brad will lead us on a meditation that will help us to reflect on that reality. But let us begin together tonight with a land acknowledgement. This is something that we at Water have incorporated into our programs to remind ourselves of why we do what we do and what we need to do more of, given the systemic injustice that Indigenous and other people of color face in this country. And I might add that with the new administration, the orders against Indigenous people have not been pretty either. A land acknowledgement, we say, is a beginning, not an end. It's simply to remind us. We at Water are on Indigenous land in Silver Spring, Maryland. This is traditional and contemporary land of the Piscataway and Anacostan peoples. We acknowledge the trauma and injustice toward Indigenous people that is deep in U.S. culture and history, and we join in efforts to eradicate it and to make reparations for the genocide involved. Water's work is aimed to bring about social justice, and with our Indigenous people, no less. Please consider the Indigenous people on whose land you sit, and feel free to list them in the chat if you wish, as a way to honor them. Let us take just a moment together to reflect on those who have come before us, whose land we sit on this day. I thank you. Let me, especially for those who are new, review our format. We haven't changed it much over time. I'm always open to suggestion, but it seems to be a good one that uh, takes us a lot of places in a short time. Our presenter will offer something brief, usually 7 or 8 minutes, to spark our contemplation. And then we spend 22 minutes in silence after we hear the gong. And this is what the gong sounds like. Do you hear it? Do you hear the gong? No? No gong. Okay. I will need my friends. I'll need my colleagues to tell me where that little place is where I have to. Oh, wait, I think I have it. Okay. Shall we try the gong again?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you very much. The gong. After the silence, after the 22 minutes together in silence, we will open the floor for conversation that emerges out of this contemplation. And feel free during the silence to turn off your video if you wish and enjoy the image that will be on the screen that we have received from Brad. And I invite you to meditate as you will. There's no right way to find your center, to breathe and to focus, but there are, of course, certain techniques, and one of is a mantra or simply to repeat a word or a phrase that helps you to pay attention to your breath, to try to tune out the things that would have you writing your grocery list at this moment. So meditate as you will. And also, please mute your phone so that we have a good, clear line, because we do record these sessions. We put them up on our website along with notes, and then we make them available to people who can't be with us at this moment. So please mute your phone to help us out in that. Let me introduce, let me introduce our speaker tonight, who is no stranger to this group, and I'm happy after a bit of a hiatus for some health issues that Brad is back with us. Brad Lutz is a United Church of Christ minister who worked in local churches and as a hospice chaplain. He's retired now, but he engaged in AIDS ministry, a very tough assignment in the day, especially at the height of the pandemic. And in his retirement, he continues his ministry through spiritual direction and faith formation events. He's an oblate of the Holy Wisdom Monastery, an interfaith group near Madison, Wisconsin. He's a longtime supporter of the Taizé community in France. And he's a friend of the Iona community in Scotland. Those are, in my view, some of the premier places to engage in spirituality. But happily for us, Brad is a regular, and he lives in Florida with his husband Michael. And over time, as we do, aging we find has its own process. But from what I observe, at least from afar, Brad is moving into his later years with grace and goodness. And we are the happy recipients of that grace and goodness tonight. Thanks in advance, Brad, for bringing, as you always do, very helpful insights. And I always find a word of hope. Heaven knows we need both of these during the early days of 2025. Thank you, Brad Lutz. Great to have you.
Thanks, Mary. I'm always pleased to be part of this meditation and look forward to it every month, and consider it a privilege to be included and have the opportunity to share my thoughts. I'm not sure about your comments of grace and goodness. I think I want that in writing to show to people who know me who might have different words to pick, but I accept them. So initially, I thought that I was going to be doing this meditation in February. So I considered a Valentine's Day theme. However, my snarky disposition, which is the opposite of grace and goodness, focused first on the expressions of overly sentimentalized, gushy love that seemed to come in February. But then I thought of those for whom there'll be no roses and no Hallmark cards, and worst of all, no chocolates. And I thought about loneliness. I confess that I'm privileged, very privileged. I live with a loving partner. I have good friends, family, and a very robust church community. Yet, there are still times when I feel lonely, and perhaps you do sometimes too. When the Creator made a companion for the first human being, she knew that we're prone to loneliness, and that loneliness weighs heavily on our souls. The most recent Surgeon General of the United States, Dr. Vivek Murthy, whose book, Together, I highly recommend, He views loneliness as an epidemic that can have lethal effects on our well-being, physically and emotionally and spiritually. In 2023, he identifies that a Gallup poll estimated that 52 million US adults felt a sense of disconnect from normal following the pandemic experience. 52 million. Services, and I apologize, I don't know if these services are available in Australia or in Nicaragua, but services like Grubhub and Instacart are products of the pandemic that endure and in many cases sustain our disconnect from other people. In a hilarious short story titled The Answer Is No, author Frederick Bachman has his main character celebrate the home delivery of food that's, quote, been cooked, transported, and delivered to his doorstep without him having to talk to a single person, unquote. But not everybody values that kind of isolation. And I think the challenge is, what do we do about loneliness? In 2018, the United Kingdom appointed a minister for loneliness. And in just last year, Seoul, South Korea, created a Care and Loneliness Policy Bureau. Sounds like something from 1984 to me. And the purpose of that bureau was to collaborate with laundromats and convenience stores to become windows of communication between isolated people and society. And also last year, the magazine Psychology Today listed 18 cures for loneliness, including talking to strangers, volunteering, and, drumroll please, doing more things with people, as if that wasn't obvious. But there's an alternative remedy, and that remedy comes from the American poet Marianne Moore, who famously said, "The cure for loneliness is solitude." She reminds us that if I'm lonely, I need to keep being by myself until I'm content being by myself. Likewise, author Henry Nouwen writes, to have a spiritual life, we must first find the courage to enter into the desert of our loneliness and to change it by gentle and persistent efforts into a garden of solitude. He goes on to say, as hard as it is to believe that the dry desert can yield endless varieties of flowers, it is equally hard to imagine that our loneliness is hiding unknown beauty. Now, I think that feeling lonely and letting it dominate our lives is a choice. Engaging in the practice of solitude is also a choice, but it's one that can change my perceptions and it can help me realize that I lack nothing. Rather, that I'm connected to all things by invisible forces that flow through me and never leave me alone. I think the Surgeon General, Murthy, would agree. He writes in his book, "Solitude allows us to get comfortable being with ourselves, which makes it easier to be ourselves in interactions with others. That authenticity helps build strong connections." Such solitude, I think, is a blessing because it opens a passage to wonderful possibilities for creativity and deeper connection to community. True belonging, writes Brene Brown, requires us to believe in and belong to ourselves so fully that we can find sacredness both in being part of something and in standing alone when necessary. I find for myself in my own spiritual practice that moments of solitude are moments of insight moments of comfort, and moments that energize me for returning to the chaos of the world around me and to the challenge of relationships around me. Now, while your meditation will certainly take you where it will, you might consider these questions. Can you imagine loneliness as a gift in disguise? What does the practice of solitude look like for you? And how do you balance the pull for solitude and community in your life? So I hope that these moments of solitude and meditation may be a blessing for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. As rich as I expected. Would you be so kind as to repeat the three questions just in case people want to have a little bit of a framework for
Sure.
their meditation? That would be very helpful, I think. And you told me you didn't want to put them in the chat, and that's fine. But just if you'd repeat them, I'd
Yeah,
appreciate it.
these are just suggestions, so I didn't want to put them in the chat because I
Sure.
don't want people to be focused like there was going to be an exam when we came back together. But these are the questions. Can you imagine loneliness as a gift in disguise? And the second one is, what does the practice of solitude look like for you? And the third, how do you balance the pull for solitude and community in your life?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And now we turn to our 22 minutes of silence. Thanks once again to Brad Lutz for a wonderful spark for our meditation. I found it personally very meaningful. It's time now to invite any of your comments, musings, questions, reflections. The floor is open. If you would use the react button at the bottom, which allows you to raise your hand. You'll see mine is up now, and then I'll put it down. And that will also bring you to the top of the queue so we know who would like to speak. Please include your name and be brief in your comments so we can hear from lots of people. But Brad, I'll simply start by saying I was I almost left during the meditation to go back to the office to find my copy of the book Journal of a Solitude by May Sarton, which is one of my old favorites. I see some people nodding their heads. One of May Sarton's, in fact, probably her best known journal, Journal of a Solitude. I'm sure perhaps you know it, or if you don't, you'd very much enjoy it. But it reminded me so much of what you had to say. Thank you. The floor is open. Please feel free. And if you don't want to use the raise hands button, just raise your hand. We stand on no ceremony here. Cynthia Tootle.
I'm not sure why I can't find the button today, but I got my first thought was, and looking at the picture, which was quite beautiful, that gee, that's not solitude. That is a tree being and a human being, and for me, that's a unique kind of togetherness, not a solitude. But of the questions, I think the thing that really struck me most was the creating a balance, because I live alone. I actually enjoy living alone. Solitude is a good friend, and I have felt very appreciative, especially the last few months of my solitude, because in many ways I am feeling very content and very optimistic in my life, which is not reflected around me much. So I've enjoyed, being able to stay in that state and going out into the other world as I feel drawn, and able to practice my ministry in a way that is supported by my time alone, which really allows me to cultivate my inner life very much. But that balancing I've found has been trickier as people become very perturbed in one way or another with things that are going on, rightfully so, but not the vibe that I'm feeling. And for me, it's been a challenge to find ways and times in which to be around people and support them, but also to honor my own sense of well-being and optimism. And so I'm I'm trying to find a balance of keeping myself grounded and being for other people, some of whom are very not grounded right now. And I feel like that's been so it's not just a loneliness versus solitude, it's also been self-care versus caring for others that are in a different place. Thank you for bringing my thoughts to this.
Thank you, Cynthia. I think many resonate with what you're saying. I've been saying to people, this is what we trained for. This is exactly what we trained for, because there aren't a lot of people who trained for this. Let us hear from Margaret Brennan. Please just unmute, Margaret. At the bottom where the audio is, it should be X'd out, and you want to just press that and it'll unmute you. Or else maybe Wed or Magdalena can do it, please. Margaret Brennan. Margaret's iPad. There we go, Margaret.
Oh, you mean me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm Margaret Burke.
Oh, I'm Meyer. I'm Margaret Ellen Burke.
That's right.
My mistake. Pardon me,
that's all right. Because I only have certain people on the screen. I think there may be someone on another page. But
my mistake, Margaret.
No, that's all right.
Margaret Ellen Burke, of course.
I was just struck by that same sense of the photo was just so moving. And I was just moved by that, that whole sense of the beauty, of the lifeless tree, the leafless tree, and also the presence of that little bird on the top. But I was struck by the fact that, how many people are healed by nature and the power. I mean, as you know, I do a lot of spiritual direction and retreat work, and it's nature that has brought life and vitality to some people who are so lonely. Whether it's because they work in their garden, they work with planting things and watching them grow, or just sitting. I was reminded of a woman by the name of Mary who some years ago moved up to the rural area where I was ministering, and her husband had retired, and I was just very conscious of her because she was so lonely because he had his hunting and his fishing and all these things. And what was striking is she was sitting at the cup of tea with me one day, and she was just talking about how lonely she was. And she said, I read and I do my crocheting, etc. But anyway, some months later, after listening to that conversation, some months later, she said to me, I have something of a surprise to share with you. She said, what I've discovered is that my loneliness has been transformed into a love of solitude of this area. So I think it's a process. Some people choose it, and others kind of back into it. Maybe that's the way of saying it. But I was deeply moved by that picture because it spoke so much to me about the power of nature and the beauty of how just to be outdoors or to be with the beauty of the shape of the tree or the sound of the birds. I was thinking that person on the swing, her head was facing the tree. She wasn't looking straight ahead. If you look at it carefully, she was turned sideways so that she could. I said, wait, I wonder if she's listening to the bird up on the top of that tree or just enjoying the shape and the beauty of creation in that tree. So that's what happened for me. It was very exciting.
Thank you very much, Margaret.
You're welcome. I don't care
Wonderful.
what you call me, Mary. That's not a problem.
No, but I don't. My goodness,
That's all right.
Just a slip. I apologize. Wonderful insights. Who'll be next? Brad, feel free to jump in when you feel like it too. Carrie Roach will be next.
Thank you. I completely agree with who has spoken. The insights I received that connected with tonight was from Elizabeth Johnson, who gave a talk about the Muslims it's not new, it's from 2019, their work on care for creation. Its name means balance, the Al-Mizan, and it's all about what Margaret was talking about the wonder and the beauty of just being in nature, and we need solitude to be able to do that engagement. So and it brings us to balance, and what a gift it is that we can not just find it in our own traditions, but beautifully written in the, I think it's 25% of the people on this planet are Muslim. So we have so much to be grateful for, and I thank all of you tonight, but Brad especially, thank you. What a grace, what a beauty. Thank you, Mary.
Grace and goodness, as I said about him. Grace and goodness.
Yes.
Thank you, Carrie. Let's see. Virginia Day, did I see your hand up?
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you, Brad. I am way, way, way out of balance. And really, I have to really think about and pray about how to get back in. You know, every weekend comes and I say, I'm going to make a Sabbath day. And I don't do it. You know, I just fill my time. I am busy, but I don't reserve the weekend for Sabbath, even one of the days. So I need help with that. Anyone who perhaps has been able to achieve that. You know, I fear the weekends if there's no plans. And you know, I've gotten terrible since COVID and we can Zoom everything in. And you know, I'm disappointed if there isn't at least a 2-hour Zoom from Joan Chittister or somebody. So I just share that thank you. I desire it. And of course, that's the beginning. I desire that balance. But I thank you for reminding me of how out of balance I am. So thank you.
Thank you for Virginia, a very honest statement. Thank you. Jean Christensen.
Yeah, a couple of things. Virginia, what I did was I just said, I'm going to be selfish, period. And every morning before I do anything else, that's my time. There's a little cost to that because there's some really cool exercise programs going on around where I live here. And I can't go, but I made that choice. So I'm not saying that's an easy one. And yeah, do I feel a little selfish? Yeah, but I think there's a benefit. The other thing, I'm currently reading and reflecting on a book called The Wild Edge of Sorrow. It's by Francis Weller. And one of the things he talks about is how we carry the grief of the earth because of what we've done to the earth. And I got a lot of reflection to do on that because my place of solitude is outside in nature, preferably in the woods. And we are destroying that. So it's dealing with kind of trying to figure out balance in a different sense, that loss and how to maybe begin to address some of that. But it is a grief that we carry. That's just one of the things he talks about.
Thank you. And if you send us that title, we'll put it in the notes. Thanks, Jean.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If anyone else would like to share, this would be a good time.
Hi, Mary. It's Ev from Canada. And
you.
I was kind of forced into solitude, joining the Widow Club, which didn't really want to sign up for when it happened after 40 years of marriage. Unlike Sisters Religious, I didn't have any training to be alone. But I realized that after the first summer, the only thing that could hold my grief was silence in just sitting outside looking at the trees. And I'm in year 7 and I love my own company. I appreciate living alone, perhaps more than I should admit. Yeah, I think gosh, I wish I could remember the quote. It's the woman that wrote A Widow's Crayon Box, something or other. And somebody asked her, well, your second husband, she said, my second husband is solitude. Anyway, I have lots of thoughts about solitude, because I'm a widow, and it's different than loneliness. I do get lonely at times, but I do appreciate my own company and my own solitude practice. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for letting us hear that experience, Ev. Brad, would you like to make any closing comments or just any kind of comment? I think
Just to say, I want to thank Cynthia especially for pointing out about the self-care dimension, because I think solitude is self-care. Loneliness is not caring to yourself, because it drains rather than fills. So I think that's very important, and I just encourage us all to be sensitive to others who may be lonely and reach out when we can, but at the same time to respect the need for people to to be alone, to have those moments of solitude for themselves. And thank you all for your comments.
Thank you, Brad. And I know I speak for all of us in saying that this has been a very moving and inspiring experience, and I think we'll take it. Yes, Margaret Ellen Burke.
Yeah, I was, thank you. I was just very moved in listening to each one tonight, in the sense that how it seems quite clear, whether we know it's God's grace moving in us or not, that we're gradually led in the midst of our loneliness to make a choice, a conscious choice. As you just said, Brad, for self-care, but a choice to find a different way of being with the heaviness that we're feeling. And, it's, I just was touched by that tonight, how it came out in each one's sharing. And it's, it's just wonderful. It's just wonderful how this God of ours continues to move in us and among us and with us, through one another, and in so many ways. But it's like that sense of making a choice, a conscious choice. And I forget who mentioned that a minute ago. And it's like, yeah, we give up some other things, but the conscious choice. And then once we start, it's like, oh my goodness, how wonderful this is. How wonderful this is. But it's choosing. I know myself, after I go once a week to visit our sisters that are in nursing home. And when I come home, I don't want to go to supper and listen to people talking about, this or that. I need this. I choose the space to just to be with what I've experienced during the day. And, it's like, it's a choice. And then, people want to know where I was, why I wasn't at supper. But it's like, what? And I just say, I needed the time to be with what was shared with me during the day, and especially with the memory care floor. I just find so moved by these wonderful women who no longer have an awareness of how great they are and have been. So to be with the sadness and the grief of that, and yet at the same time to bring it into that space of solitude is healing. Is healing for me, and it energizes me.
Thank you, Margaret Ellen. And it was Jean Christensen who talked about using the morning time for herself, and
Right.
Of course other things emerge. And I think you're right that the echo in some of these was, sometimes we feel guilty because we enjoy being alone so much, or You know, Ev, you were beginning to move in that, and there's no reason for that. I mean, these are great ways of being, and they don't take away. One doesn't take away from the other. You know, our enjoyment of solitude doesn't take away from relationships or
Right.
previous relationships or previous ways of being. There's simply other ways for now. So,
Right.
I'm going to
Thank
leave
you.
the Zoom open after I make the final announcements, but I really want to thank everybody for being together. And I want to explain also, I want to mention the forthcoming programs, but I want to explain why we have a program tonight, tomorrow night, and Wednesday. And that's because the beginning of the month was very busy for us with other things and travel. And so we found the only thing we could do to fit everything in was to put them 1, 2, 3, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But you're welcome to all of them. I want to thank especially Wed and Magdalena for the IT help
Yeah.
tonight. Brad, I've thanked you several times, but I want to thank you again. And
Yeah.
I'm going to shamelessly beg for your words that I can send out to people. If you can give us a copy, if you want, you may not want to, but if you'd like to give us a copy, we would love to have them. So I just find that some people, pardon me, some people really like to watch these things and hear it over again. Others of us like to read it and to use it for our own meditation. So I'm shamelessly uh, requesting that. If you
Ditto.
It's in the mail.
Oh,
Wonderful. Tomorrow, excuse me, tomorrow evening there will be a ritual, the water ritual at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Welcome the new year with all of its struggles and hopes. And Diane New and the water community, including Magdalena and Wed, will be part of that program tomorrow night. Pray, hope, resist, recommit in the struggle for meaning and value in these historic times. So that's tomorrow night. And then on Wednesday, we have a rather special program. It will be at a special time. It will be at 12:30 instead of 1 o'clock Eastern Time on Wednesday with Elizabeth Davis, a Mercy sister from Newfoundland and Canada, and Phyllis Zagano, who is very well known for her research and promotion of women deacons. And they will be talking about the Synod and women, what's next. And the happy thing about this, people don't know this, but the happy thing was that we had planned Phyllis for that hour, and the Canadian groups had planned Elizabeth Davis for the same hour, absolutely without,
yeah.
just one of those serendipitous things. And when I discovered, much to my chagrin, that we were competing with each other for the very same audience at the same hour, I said, "Oh goodness." And both Phyllis and Elizabeth Davis immediately said, "Oh, of course." Excuse me, of course we must do this together. What an honor and a privilege to work together to talk about the Synod and women. So it's just been a wonderful collaboration, and there are hundreds of people signed up. So you are more than welcome. And we'll be talking about what's next. I mean, what did this Synod mean? If it's too Catholic for you, I understand, but it happens to be a thing in terms of ecclesiology and the importance of women, underscore women, in terms of ministry and administration and so forth. So if you're keen on it, come. And finally, I want to say that our next meditation, you won't have to wait long. It will be next week, a week from tonight, with Cynthia Tootle. And Cynthia Tootle is bringing one of my favorite goddesses, Kuan Yin, the goddess of compassion. And she comes at a great time, Cynthia. I can't thank you enough for bringing not only one of my favorites, but for bringing compassion into our hearts and minds again, and doing so next week. And I'll talk next week. Excuse me. I'll talk next week about the Rosemary Ganley essay contest, which we are reviving for its 2025 iteration. And this is where feminists change the world 650 words at a time. So you're invited to, or someone you know is invited to write an essay of 650 words for $650 if you win one of the top 3 spots. So this is a way of encouraging writers to bring their thoughts to the rest of us. And we'll talk more about that later. Again, thank you for being here. Our programs are free. They're open to everybody. Donations are welcome, needed. But as we always say at Water, and I never tire of saying it, that when we socialize resources, then everybody wins. And water programs are available to everyone without charge. We're grateful to people who support our work, and we're more than grateful for those who come. So we believe at Water, if we share among us, there's enough. It's a contingency. If we share among us, there's enough, and happily there is. And that's really the key. So with that, I close the official part of our program with a final thanks to Brad and to all, and invite you to stay and chat if you wish. And please be safe, be well, and work for the peace and justice in which we so firmly believe.